With more on the future of Israel and Gaza, we are now joined by Middle East political commentator Karys Rhea.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us this morning, Karys. Let's start with your thoughts about seeing the hostages back home finally as part of this ceasefire. What's that been like to witness?
Oh, there are no words, honestly. You don't even have to understand Hebrew just to really be moved by these scenes, these embraces of loved ones, some young infants which who don't even know their fathers, and seeing them for the first time. And I mean, keep in mind that this is really all that Israel wanted from the beginning. In the early stages of the war, they were not even asking for surrender. They just wanted the hostages home. And that eventually changed. But you can see just, from these videos and from the unity coming out of Israel, the enormous relief of the Jewish people as one organism, one body. And it really shows how Israel has a commitment not just to every Jew to provide safe harbor for every Jewish individual, but also to every citizen, because there were Muslims and other non-Jews that were taken hostages as well. And Israel valued every life equally and sacrificed almost 1,000 of their own men to try to rescue them. And, contrary to being an ethno state or a Jewish supremacist country, Israel is really a model for humanity. And we can contrast that with a restaurant in Gaza that just opened one day after this ceasefire and this supposed genocide, which was named Nova, after the Nova Music Festival, where hundreds of young concert goers were slaughtered and kidnapped. So, bless Trump's heart for getting hostages out for the first time without a complete exit from the Israeli troops. But we owe just as much to Netanyahu and to those nearly 1,000 IDF soldiers that made the ultimate sacrifice for their country.
What about the news that's just coming out about Hamas not delivering all the bodies? What is your take on that, and what happens next?
Right. Well, as you said, only 7 of the 28 have been returned, and one of them is misidentified. I think Israel confirmed that just today, which is the same thing that happened the last time there was a ceasefire with Shiri Bibas, the mother of those 2 poor infants that were slaughtered by Hamas. And this is maddening and frankly outrageous. As you said, I mean, this was a condition of phase 1 of the 20-point plan, and it's already been broken, and it presents a real problem. Does Trump have any sort of mechanism to get them back? I mean, I think he said that Turkey was going to maybe go in and look for them, but nobody knows Gaza City, which is probably where they are, if it's true that Hamas is unable to locate them, better than Israel. So does this mean Israel is going to have to re-enter Gaza City? I mean, Hamas has already entered that vacuum and essentially began a civil war with other clans, as you just showed. Trump says they're gangs, but we really don't know. But, I don't know. What then? I mean, some international task force is sent in to go look for them. Ultimately, this is already creating a huge inflammatory situation on the ground. And it just goes to show that Hamas is not operating in good faith. It never has. It has no intention of disarming, regardless of what Trump says. And honestly, this is not a peace deal. I hate to say it, because I'm just as moved by the hostages being home, but it is not a peace, a lasting peace, let alone in the Middle East. And it is certainly not the end of the war. We have a long way to go.
Do you have any perspective or thoughts on the potential for Western journalists finally to be able to enter Gaza to see firsthand what the situation really looks like on the ground there? Because we've only seen it through very limited eyes because of Israeli restrictions on journalists entering the territory.
That is true. I don't think that is so unlikely or uncommon. Sorry, not unlikely, but it is not so uncommon if we look at other war zones, even like Ukraine or other active war zones, and especially in this region. A lot of people, including pro-Israel Zionists, think that Israel should have let in more journalists. I am not of that persuasion because of the incredible manipulation and corruption that that Hamas engages in against journalists. Basically, the more journalists that Hamas kills, the better for their side. And so Israel does not want to be in a situation where it is actually putting journalists in harm's way in an area where they are more likely than in other war zone situations to be killed, just because of the incredible information and psychological warfare that goes on here. And then Israel would be blamed in a way that no other country is blamed when journalists are killed. So Israel is in this double-edged sword. If they don't let in journalists, then they're blamed for trying to hide the truth. But if they do let in journalists, many of whom will inevitably be killed, then Israel is blamed for killing journalists. It's a really difficult situation that Israel has to navigate. As for the future, I do not know the answer to your question. I have not heard anything about that. But I mean, if Hamas is still patrolling the streets, remember there's 250 cold-blooded murderers that are released and 1,700 Gazan detainees that are back into, that are many of them back into the Strip. And there could be a lot of Yahya Sinwars in there, who was the October 7th mastermind who was released in a previous deal in 2011. So it's true that Hamas is severely degraded into a guerrilla army, but I think as long as they're standing and in control of urban areas of the Strip, then Israel will have to, that's not going to be a decision that they make lightly. They'll really have to consider whether they want to let in journalists.
Karys, earlier in the segment, you said, God bless Trump. Can you give us a little temperature check? What are Israelis saying about President Trump and his peace summit, and what happens next in the Middle East? What is the opinion that you're picking up?
Oh, Israelis love Trump. I don't think there is any country in the world that is more pro-Trump than Israel. It might even be more pro-Trump than the Middle East. I mean, even Israelis who can't stand Netanyahu are cheering for Trump. So there's overwhelming support for him. And there has been certainly since he took office in 2024, but also in 2016. Israel was a largely pro-Trump country, with, of course, many exceptions because it is a democracy. But with regards to this International Peace Summit, I think Israelis are rightfully concerned. I mean, like I said, it's not a peace summit, this Sharm el-Sheikh meeting. I mean, yes, we have our hostages back, amen, and I think that's what Israelis are focused on right now, but this is not a victory until Hamas is completely disarmed, demilitarized, is no longer the governing body of Palestinians. Then, contrary to what Trump is saying, we cannot claim victory, nor can we say that this war is over. I mean, everyone's framing this as a peace deal and peace in the Middle East, but in my opinion, Trump, as much as I love him, is pushing this illusion to essentially get everybody dependent on him in order to usher in the Abraham Accords and get the Nobel Peace Prize. Because think about it, what's peaceful about a summit that is being called by Trump, chiefly concerned with Israel, with Netanyahu initially invited, only to be pushed out because Hamas's, some of their biggest backers, namely Qatar and Turkey, have refused to actually have him there. And so Turkey and Qatar have mixed duplicitous interests. They're all Muslim Brotherhood stooges of Hamas, and they're playing both sides. But that's the way diplomacy is. And Trump capitulated to Netanyahu being pushed out because he understands that game and he wants to soften them up so that peace can come through the Abraham Accords. We all know he's a transactional guy and he's the center of gravity. So he's flattering their egos and prematurely pushing this narrative, this peace in the Middle East narrative, hoping that it is enough to lead to the Abraham Accords. And frankly, I think all this pomp and circumstance and, these holy monarchs and world leaders getting together, patting each other on the back, it kind of makes my stomach turn a little bit that it's being framed as peace. It's much more sinister than it looks, but I think that people, especially in the West, are so desperate for peace, this abstract concept, that they want to believe it. But the big question at the end of the day is, does Trump want to maintain this international illusion of peace between Hamas and Israel when in fact there is no peace yet? Or is he genuinely interested in Hamas disarming? And as you mentioned, is he really prepared to go back into Gaza City, use violence in order to get the job done?
Yeah.
Karys Rhea, many unanswered questions there, and very good points, well taken in terms of President Trump threatening just in the last 24 hours or so, if Hamas doesn't live up to the deal, there will be consequences. What those look like remains to be seen.